Trump, however, launched the campaign regardless and is now instructing defense manufacturers to quadruple production, an order that implicitly acknowledges the reality of the stockpile problem and the inability of current production rates to sustain the current expenditure rate. Quadrupling production from a baseline of just 6 THAAD interceptors per month means a new output of 24 per month. To put this into perspective, the UAE alone intercepted 125 drones and 6 ballistic missiles in a single day last Saturday. 24 to 300 rounds per month is simply insufficient in a theater that is consuming interceptors faster than any American military engagement since the Gulf War. The mathematics of this war do not favor the side equipped with the most expensive weapons. Instead, they demonstrably bend towards the side possessing the most affordable ones. Every cluster missile Iran fires costs a mere fraction of Israel's response, yet it inflicts damage, physical, psychological, and economic, that compounds over time, irrespective of the intercept rate. An 85% intercept rate against cluster warheads, while seemingly high, still means that submunitions will fall across 8 kilometers of Israeli civilian neighborhoods 15% of the time in a city of 4 million people. This 15% is not a reassuring figure. It represents a body count waiting to be tallied. The Iron Dome system is extraordinary, as is David's sling, and the Arrow systems represent the finest long-range ballistic missile defense ever constructed. Yet, none of them were designed for a sustained, months-long campaign involving 500 ballistic missiles and 2,000 drones. This is coming from a country, Iran, that is simultaneously receiving Russian satellite targeting data, absorbing 3,000 U.S.-Israeli strikes, losing 300 launchers, and yet is still capable of firing wave after wave against Tel Aviv, all while announcing that unconditional surrender is something to take to its grave. The White House projects this war to continue for another 4 to 6 weeks. Every single cluster missile that manages to penetrate the defenses before interception leaves behind a pervasive contamination problem that will inevitably outlast the war itself. The unexploded submunitions will be discovered by children, gardeners, and workers clearing rubble for many months after hostilities cease. The IDF Home Front Command's warning is therefore not a temporary advisory. It signifies the very beginning of a long-term public safety reality that central Israel is now forced to live with. Regardless of when the sirens eventually fall silent, it is crucial to understand that Iran has barely even begun. 6 confirmed cluster warhead launches in 8 days of a campaign are just the tip of the iceberg. Iran's total ballistic capability, estimated at approximately 1,000 missiles, still includes variants specifically engineered for cluster dispersion. The Khyber Shahkan, the particular missile Iran has been deploying with cluster warheads, boasts a range of around 1,250 kilometers. It uses solid fuel, enabling it to be prepared and launched quickly. Moreover, it is designed to maneuver in its terminal phase to defeat interception, and its cluster warhead variant costs Iran a fraction of what defending against it costs Israel. One Gulf ally, according to CNN, was already critically low on interceptors by day 4 of the conflict. A regional government made an urgent request to U.S. Central Command for immediate resupply. As a regional source put it, "It's not panic yet, but the sooner they get here, the better." Even before the war commenced, Joint Chiefs Chairman General Kane personally warned Trump that a protracted campaign would impact interceptor stockpiles, not might impact them. He delivered this stark warning before the first bomb even fell. The inability to intercept submunitions in freefall with Arrow systems, which are explicitly designed for ballistic trajectories, is a critical flaw. Similarly, the Iron Dome, developed for short-range rockets, was not engineered to handle ballistic reentry vehicle dispersion from 1,400 kilometers away. The escalating gap between what Iran is currently deploying and Israel's layered defense systems is not a technological one. It is, fundamentally, a conceptual mismatch. The existing system was meticulously built for one specific threat architecture, but Iran is now executing an entirely different one. This stark difference manifests itself directly in the submunitions scattered across residential neighborhoods in central Israel, which bomb disposal teams will be diligently neutralizing for weeks to come. It It is important to note that 112 countries signed the 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions, outright banning their use due to the devastating harm they inflict upon civilians. However, Iran, Israel, and the United States conspicuously chose not to sign this convention. The legal framework for condemning what is currently falling on Tel Aviv is, regrettably, the very same legal framework that the countries involved in both the bombing and the defending collectively opted not to join. Amnesty International has unequivocally condemned their use, and numerous human rights organizations have meticulously cataloged the widespread impacts. UNICEF has already confirmed that 181 children have been killed in Iran from the other direction of this conflict, highlighting that the moral accounting in this war operates in multiple directions simultaneously. None of these directions ultimately leads anywhere except towards more damage and more dead, until someone, eventually, decides the cost has finally become too high. Here is what the current trajectory of the cluster munition campaign implies for the next 30 days. This war, however, shows no ceasefire on the horizon. While Trump has demanded unconditional surrender, Iran's president has dismissed that demand as something to be taken to the grave. Now, let us examine precisely what the cluster missile does to this grim arithmetic, as it introduces a variable that the entire architecture of Israeli missile defense was never engineered to handle efficiently. A conventional Iranian ballistic missile approaches as a single, identifiable target. Radar systems track it, calculate its trajectory, and an interceptor is fired. If the interceptor strikes, the threat is eliminated. If it misses, the missile impacts and causes a single, concentrated explosion. The fundamental defense logic here is one-to-one. Improve your intercept rate, and you improve your overall protection. A cluster warhead, however, fundamentally shatters this logic precisely at the moment of maximum commitment. The missile initially appears as a single target. Israel launches interceptors, potentially multiple ones, primarily because an Iranian maneuvering reentry vehicle does not follow a predictable path. But then, the warhead opens, and at that critical moment, before it even reaches the ground, the submunitions have already been released. Even if an interceptor successfully destroys the main body of the missile after dispersion, the individual submunitions are already in freefall. There is no second shot. There is simply no intercept solution for 24 to 80 individual falling objects that possess no propulsion and no trajectory predictable enough to engage. They simply fall where they fall, landing wherever gravity takes them. Israeli military spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani articulated this plainly this week. Iran has used cluster munitions multiple times. This is a war crime when directed towards civilians, and we're tracking that situation. We're tracking that situation, not stopping it, tracking it. A cluster warhead variant, while more complex due to its dispenser mechanism, the numerous submunitions, and the intricate engineering required for precise high-altitude opening, still represents a fractional cost compared to the immense expense of defending against it. When Iran fires a single cluster missile towards Tel Aviv, Israel invariably launches multiple interceptors. This is because a failed intercept over a city of 4 million people is simply not a recoverable error. The stakes are too high. Thus, multiple interceptors, each costing $5 million, are expended against a weapon that perhaps cost only $400,000 to construct. This creates an egregious financial disparity, with a ratio of somewhere between 6-to-1 and 15-to-1 in Iran's financial favor on every single launch. Since February 28, Iran has launched over 500 ballistic missiles and nearly 2,000 drones. According to Iranian military sources, the combined U.S.-Israeli force has successfully destroyed 300 Iranian missile launchers, and, notably, Iran's ballistic missile attack rate against Israel has reportedly dropped by 86% from day one. Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane confirmed that this degradation of Iranian capabilities is indeed real, indicating that the military campaign targeting launch infrastructure is proving effective. However, there is another figure, sitting on the opposite side of this achievement, that offers no reassurance whatsoever. As of Tuesday, the IDF had already launched approximately 4,000 munitions in this current campaign, roughly the same number used during the entirety of the 12-day war last June. This means that in just 8 days, the expenditure rate is 3 times higher than that of the summer campaign. The offensive bombing rate, the interceptor consumption rate, and the financial bleeding rate are all running simultaneously at triple the pace of the previous war. That last conflict lasted 12 days before a ceasefire was declared. Beyond these specific cluster variants, Iranian ballistic missiles have, in total, killed at least 11 people in Israel and injured over 1,000 others during 8 days of relentless bombardment, encompassing more than 90 attempted strikes. However, there is a crucial narrative that remains largely untold. It is not the widely circulated footage of bright trails dispersing across the night sky, which has indeed been seen by all. The true story that isn't being adequately conveyed lies in the underlying mathematics of this conflict, the cold, irrefutable arithmetic of production lines that explains why 6 cluster missiles in 8 days is far from being a mere military curiosity. It is, in fact, a stark signal about the trajectory of this war. Once this financial and logistical calculus is truly grasped, one begins to comprehend why the most sophisticated missile defense architecture in human history is confronting a problem it was fundamentally never designed to solve. Allow me to elaborate. An Arrow 2 or Arrow 3 interceptor, which constitutes Israel's primary defense against incoming Iranian ballistic missiles, carries an approximate cost of $2.5 million per round. This staggering figure represents the price of a single shot aimed at neutralizing one incoming threat. According to Haaretz's Defense Economics Analysis, published just this week, intercepting the more than 200 ballistic missiles Iran has launched at Israel since February 28 has incurred a cost of anywhere between 1 billion and 2 billion Israeli shekels in interceptors alone. This translates to roughly $270 million to $540 million spent in just 8 days, all to halt missiles that Iran manufactures for a mere fraction of that cost. A single Iranian ballistic missile typically costs somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000, depending on its specific variant. There is a specific number that the IDF Home Front Command disclosed this week, a figure that every individual in central Israel has now involuntarily committed to memory: 8 kilometers. This represents the radius within which a single Iranian cluster missile warhead can unleash its deadly payload. It detonates high above, scattering its lethal contents indiscriminately. This is not about a single, concentrated explosion in one location. Instead, between 24 and 80 individual submunitions, each armed with 2.5 kilograms of explosives, are released from a solitary casing at altitude. These descend silently, without propulsion or guidance, across an area comparable in size to a small city, landing wherever gravity dictates: on rooftops, in gardens, beneath parked cars, on pavements outside schools, or even on playgrounds where children might have been playing just an hour before. The IDF Home Front Command issued a grave warning to the Israeli public this week, stating, "Do not approach any missile remains on the ground. Alert authorities if you see one. Stay away because the ones that did not explode on impact are still present, lying in wait for an unwitting foot, an inquisitive hand, or, tragically, a child who might pick up something small and unfamiliar, something that clearly does not belong." Since February 28th, Iran has now fired at least 6 cluster missile warheads at Israel, a number confirmed by both Haaretz and the IDF. On March 1st, video footage viewed by millions showed submunitions raining down across central Israel. 2 days later, on March 3rd, another cluster warhead struck near Tel Aviv, causing injuries to at least 12 people. Then, on March 5th, a subsequent barrage included what Israeli and American analysts at Critical Threats independently confirmed to be yet another cluster warhead. The defense is not failing. Rather, it is being utterly exhausted. And in the harsh economics of modern warfare, exhaustion and failure invariably arrive at the same destination. They merely take different amounts of time to get there. Please share this video with every contact you have right now. Iran has fired at least 6 confirmed cluster missile warheads at Israel, each dispersing 24 to 80 submunitions across an 8-kilometer radius that cannot be intercepted after dispersion. In just 8 days, 11 Israelis have been killed and over 1,000 injured. Intercepting more than 200 ballistic missiles has cost Israel between $270 million and $540 million in interceptors alone. Iran's missiles cost a fraction of what it costs to stop them. The IDF's expenditure rate in 8 days already matches that of the entire 12-day June war. One Gulf ally ran out of interceptors by day 4. The THAAD production rate stands at 6 per month, while Trump has ordered quadruple production. Unexploded submunitions are now scattered across central Israeli neighborhoods, representing a contamination problem that will undoubtedly outlast the war. The defense is not failing, it is being exhausted. And exhaustion and failure ultimately arrive at the same conclusion.